Happy Monday, everyone, and good morning. Welcome into Rounding the Bases Live, presented by Enterprise Bank and Trust. Getting ready to do the show right now. Well, not getting ready. The show has officially started in a nice thunderstorm. So let's see. Oh, yeah, a good one going in Kansas City right now. So let's see if we can stay on the air. And I've got a phenomenal episode coming up to you from the KCAV studios, Kansas City Audio Visual. If you've got audio visual needs, please check them out. They can do exactly what they did for me, but they deal with huge offices, major companies, all the bells and whistles, anything you could want. So I hope that you will take a look at them. And of course, my partners at Enterprise Bank and Trust, hashtag no stopping you. They've been so supportive and so instrumental in helping me bring this show 5 days a week to audiences. And this is episode number 116. How in the world did I get into that mess? But it's been a lot of fun. I hope everyone had a good weekend. I'm excited. Baseball back at Kauffman Stadium tonight. So, as I've said many times, doing home and road games from home, which gets a little quiet when the team is out of town. So, without fans, still, at least there'll be some baseball in front of our eyes and not on the TV. So, good weekend overall, minus the tire blowout on I-435. If anybody was driving behind a black pickup truck that suddenly started swerving all over the place. Sorry about that, but no harm done other than the tire. So, and a few hours lost, but glad that that everything worked out there, and ready to start a new week with a phenomenal guest, and one that really can talk so much about the power of entrepreneurship and the power of the Kauffman family. I mean, shoot, I go to Kauffman Stadium every single day. Never had the opportunity to meet Mr. and Mrs. Kauffman, Ewing and Muriel Kauffman, but I know that a woman right now that is very involved with the Kauffman Foundation, Melissa Roberts Chapman, joins me right now. And Melissa, great to visit with you. Senior Program Officer, Entrepreneurship for the Kauffman Foundation. First and foremost, how are you doing this morning?
I'm great, Joel. Thanks. How are you?
I'm doing well. And it's good to kick off another week as I think the world keeps changing, and we keep talking about wanting to get back to old norms, and I keep encouraging everybody to embrace some new norms, and this is where we're at right now. And I say that because I know that the Kauffman Foundation is such a powerful force here in Kansas City and in the region. You can't stop handing out grants, you can't stop researching grants, you can't stop making an impact in the entrepreneurial community and beyond. So how much have things changed for you?
Oh boy, Joel, for us, we've had to adapt, but it's nothing compared to our grantees, the people that are really close to entrepreneurs, doing the work of educating them and helping them, get connected with resources every day. But I'm always so impressed by how adaptable our grantees are, and, they really keep their missions first and foremost. And so it's just a real pleasure to kind of be surrounded by such a dedicated group of people.
Well, I want to talk a little bit about your role and how you got here too, because even looking over or your bio, and obviously if you were involved the way you were uh, with 1 million cups, you have that entrepreneurial spirit. Tell me a bit about what you love about your job and really being so involved in the growth of entrepreneurship here in the region.
Yeah, I mean, this has been really the privilege of a lifetime,
Mm.
Joel, because, I started out as an entrepreneur myself, at probably not a particularly good one. I started a business out of necessity.
Mm.
Um, when I moved home to Kansas City from DC, where I'd been working, I got an opportunity to start a business, basically to work remotely for an old employer. And out of that, I really struggled in the early days. I was pretty ill-equipped. Um, and so I reached out and asked for help, as so many entrepreneurs do. I just kind of Googled entrepreneurship Kansas City back in 2013. And the first thing that popped up was the Kauffman Foundation. So, after wandering in and asking them if they knew a good tax guy, they pointed me to 1 million cups, and I got involved in the early days, and it's snowballed from there. So that's my story.
And now you get to change lives, which truly, and I don't think that I could say this clearly enough. And I was telling you before we went on that getting a chance to pass out grant checks once a year in the Blue Valley School District, and when I see the I may not actually see the ultimate impact, but I just see the emotion that's involved from the teachers. And so, that's just something that enables them to do their job more effectively to affect kids' lives. Now you're potentially talking about the people that you're dealing with, their livelihood here, and their chance to make it as that entrepreneur. What's that feeling like?
Yeah, Joel, when I work with these nonprofits, it's such a long process. So we get to know each other really well through the process of kind of applying for the grant and doing what we would call due diligence, but really researching the organization, kind of getting to understand their finances, getting to understand their staff and their expertise. And then when we finally arrive at the point of actually making a grant, delivering the check, so to speak, we don't have those comical kind of oversized checks that y'all get to hand out. But I have a little trick, which is I call grantees at the last minute, and I kind of act like I have one more question for them at the 11th hour if they don't pick up the phone. So when they do finally answer, give me a call back, telling them that they've got the grant is like the best part of the year.
So you're kind of messing with them for at least a brief second, just because.
Yeah, honestly, it's a little selfish because I like that moment, and so I want to make sure I get to talk to them. So,
It's okay though, and they'll always remember that moment too. They'll remember that conversation, and so it just makes me think a little bit of the. We have a million stories in baseball where the kid finally, excuse me, the kid finally realizes his dream, and the manager calls him in and starts to tell him what he did wrong, or you need. I think last year we had kid Nicky Lopez, the second baseman, and it was Mother's Day, and so the manager brought him in and started scolding him for not calling his mom. Call your mom right now, and then says your son's going up to the big league. So these are. It's a little different, I know, but these truly are moments that I know they'll never forget. And I mean, it's potentially life changing, organization changing, and beyond just one person, or the outreach is amazing. So who, and I know it's not just Kansas City, it's certainly the region too. Um, who do you work with? Who are the wide range of organizations that you're working with?
yeah, that's a great question. Well, I, lead a team of amazing program officers at the Kauffman Foundation. So shout out to Ashley, Chris, and Aaron, and Rochelle, who's also a team member. But we work to provide those resources that help entrepreneurs succeed through intermediary organizations. A lot of times those are nonprofits. We would call them entrepreneur support organizations, or ESOs. So we make grants to those intermediary nonprofits to deliver programs. We work with folks all across the 4-state region surrounding Kansas City, which we call the Heartland. And so that includes Kansas, Missouri, Nebraska, and Iowa. And so I've been, involved in Kansas City for a long time, and Kansas for a few years, but I've had a great time over the last 3 months making friends in Nebraska and Iowa and St. Louis. So it's been a lot of fun.
And there's never been a better time to make friends across a region or a country or wherever it is. I mean, I keep saying that for as often as we lament the fact that we can't have this face to face, it's opening up other doors. And I'm guessing, and it sounds like right now that you are living proof of that you're finding this connectivity with nonprofits, people, whoever, um, outside of Kansas City.
Yeah, it's been really great. Last year about this time, my whole team was on the road. So we did a 3-month long group road trip through all 4 states. And so it's been sad that we can't get out into the field in the same way this year just to get face to face with people, but it's so much easier, and we're getting just as good of insight talking to folks, virtually just like this. And so, I'm always grateful, not only that it makes it easier to get around the region, but also that when we think about kind of connecting this region with the best and brightest in the country and the world, that process is so much easier too.
All right, so let's talk about some of the process and the history of the Kauffman Foundation, because for me, I feel like I know the Kaufmans and I never met them, and I think that probably has. It's more than just showing up for almost 13 years now, walking into Kauffman Stadium, a venue named after them. but it's being surrounded by a culture that they created. It's being surrounded by an organization, a baseball team that they brought or formed in Kansas City, not because they were baseball fans, but because they understood the civic pride in this city. And so I'm wondering how much you feel that or experience that on a daily basis, because we're talking about a very, very powerful organization here.
Well, thanks. I don't know that I always feel quite so powerful, Joel, but it's good to know that we're perceived that way.
Yeah, well, I mean, but and I know there's humility, and I also know that there's, you know, there's a lot of work that's going into it. It's not like you're just being handed this big, you know, big mound of cash and here go. But there's just such an amazing legacy. I mean, I've got to imagine that you feel that too.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I like you feel like I knew Mr. K even though I never met him, but there's so many of us that take such inspiration from his story. As a kid, I was a real nerd, a real book reader, and so that's one of those things that Mr. K and I had in common. So I find a lot of resonance in his life story, but Mr. K, for those of you who don't know his story, was what today we would call a life sciences entrepreneur. So he started really a pharma company in the basement of his house back when things like that were legal. Be a little bit harder to do that today, but he was really an exceptional salesman, an exceptional manager of people. And so one of the best parts of my job is that folks seem to come out of the woodwork to talk about their experience working with or working for Mr. K and what an amazing time that was. And hearing that story or those stories is really one of my favorite parts of the job. But he started this company in his basement. He grew it to be one of the largest pharmaceutical companies in the world. Became Marion Merrill Dow, but today you might know it as Sanofi. And so when he sold that company, it's said that he made 100 millionaires here in Kansas City because he believed so strongly that every employee would be rowing in the same direction if they had the opportunity to own a small part of the company. And so he was really an entrepreneur, not just for himself and not just, for the kind of Facebook like wealth creation that we think about associated with entrepreneurship today, but really, spun out a whole community of entrepreneurs and philanthropists in the city, the likes of which is rarely seen. So to get to work for a guy like that is really incredible. And that's what it feels like. We get to work for that guy.
Which is amazing. Obviously, I wanted to share a little bit of the website because I think that just right off the bat, there's such a powerful message here. And take risks, own success, be uncommon. But I love the messaging here, and it's so applicable to today and the climate that we're in. We believe all people, regardless of their background, should have the opportunity to learn, take risks, and own their own success. Yet all the money in the world cannot solve problems unless we work together. So we first listen to the communities we serve, tap into our learnings and relationships, and bring everyone together to build and support programs that improve education, boost entrepreneurship, and help our hometown of Kansas City thrive. And that goes obviously beyond the region. I just keep thinking, Melissa, that we're so challenged right now by the pandemic, by the racial injustice, by the hurt right now in this country. And so I know that what you guys are doing is a part of that solution and part of bringing people together. And I'm curious how much that listening aspect, which, oh, by the way, has always been important, how much more important that is right now amidst all of this. I don't know if chaos is the right word, but a lot of fear.
Yeah, I think this is a really difficult time for a lot of people, including those in entrepreneurship, Joel, as you mentioned. So, of course, listening always comes first. You heard me talk about our road show that we went on last year. That was really part of our listening process. We met with entrepreneurship supporters across the entire region. And what really, really came out of that tour, as well as out of the demographics of the region and how this place is changing, is that we've got to be laser focused right now on equity and inclusion in entrepreneurship if we want to have any chance at economic success. And that was before the pandemic. And so I think when we look at how the world has changed right now, with racial injustice kind of becoming a headline in a bigger way, it's always been here, but not everybody's been paying attention. And, with the impact that the pandemic has had, that's been so unequal, I think this is really a time where we've all got to get really serious about pushing forward solutions that are more equitable, both in what we're talking about and how we're talking about things. And so you've got to, in a sense, you've got to walk and chew gum at the same time. We've got to fund things that have a focus on making sure entrepreneurship itself becomes more inequitable, but we've also got to look inside and make sure that our processes, how we choose who to work with, how we do diligence on these organizations, is also equitable. That's a real challenge, but it's deeply important. That's stuff that we've been working on for the last year.
And I know that it's such well, first off, I can only imagine that all of this can be a very exhausting process at times. The amount of work, the amount of research, everything that goes into it. I'll remind everyone, you don't just cut a check and hand it out. It's just not that simple. But I know that the rewards and the payoff have to feel so good. And just looking through your LinkedIn feed, you, to me, and I don't know you very well at all, and we're just really meeting virtually other than some emails, but for lack of a better term, I would say I see so much cheerleading in what you're doing, the way you're picking people up. I see you commenting on everyone as a, hey, go get him, great job, proud of you type of thing. It's not about me, it's about you. Am I reading that right? Because it looks to me like you're a huge supporter of just everyone that you can get your hands on in the entrepreneurial community. And that doesn't necessarily mean with a check either.
Yeah, that's absolutely right, Joel. I mean, we've got such a great and rich entrepreneurial community here in Kansas City, so it's easy to be a cheerleader. So there's a lot of great people around. And so seeing, I think there's a lot of things that are happening at the same time here. We're seeing the evolution of the community. We're working to become more equitable. I wouldn't say we're there yet. But there are all these great entrepreneurial supporters that have been around the city for a long time that I love sharing stories from. I know you've talked with a few of them. So my friend Dan Smith, Nia Richardson, and Casey Bizcare, Asia Morris. I mean, the list goes on and on. And so there's so many incredible entrepreneurship supporters, and a lot of them, we've been just friends for years. And so, to see like last week's, Casey Biz Journal Next Gen Leaders come out, and to see Kim Wallace Carlson, my colleague at Kauffman, and Adam Arredondo and Ezzy Redwood on that list. I mean, it feels like not just that the community is evolving, but that it's growing up. It's becoming influential in the way that we all knew it could be. So it's a really exciting time to be in this world.
Well, and I think too that there's a lot of those names that you mentioned they're not secrets to people like you and me. And I'll put myself in there. I mean, look, they would have been secrets to me because 4 years ago, before I started running my own business, I didn't know who any of these people were. And maybe if they watched baseball, they knew me. If they didn't, they didn't, but I didn't know them. And then you start networking and you start meeting and you start hearing these stories, and it's just inspiring. And so when I see an Ezzy Redwood mentioned, I'm not the least bit surprised, but I also understand that when he gets that mention in the business journal, there are a lot of people that are maybe very successful, but aren't in the entrepreneurial community that suddenly are seeing them. And so it's exciting just to see that growth. And I'm sure you feel the same way.
Oh, yeah. I mean, I remember, Adam and Ezzy and I would sit around and talk about the days in the basement of a house in the Casey Startup Village, and how much fun we had there. So to get to this place where, the community is really starting to step up and take ownership in some of the civic issues that are facing our community, and advocate for the things that we think are important, I think it's a long time coming. But it's deeply important because we're at a time where, for years there was an entrepreneurship community and there was a business community. Today, it seems like they're really starting to become one and the same. And that's not surprising to those of us who've been working in this world for a long time, because we know that entrepreneurship is business. That's the point of entrepreneurship. You start
Mm-hmm.
and run big businesses over time. And so, the business community is evolving to be a little bit more inclusive of folks who have been leading the charge in this entrepreneurial side for a long time.
Here's a former guest chiming in right now, Mike Meyer. Love Melissa, such a great human being and a leader in Casey. Who doesn't love Mike Meyer, by the way?
Oh gosh, Mike Meyer. I'm still trying to work on him to get me a deal on a piano, but I don't think he does those.
Come on, Mike. I mean, if anyone can get a deal on a piano, Mike Meyer can get a deal on a piano. A Band of Angels board member when we started up. I should have worn my Band of Angels t-shirt. He sent me a couple of Band of Angels t-shirts. Not to get on the show, by the way. I think he sent them afterwards. Mike and I have been friends for a number of years. He and I became friends sort of when I was starting on my entrepreneurial journey, and just kind of happened organically. And I don't know that there's a kinder human being in. Oh, we got breaking news here. There it is. See,
it only took 5 years.
Come on, Round in the Bases live. We can make pianos happy. Mike highly involved. I was talking about handing out grant checks for the Blue Valley Education Foundation. Mike's highly involved in that, so we got to know each other there and with some other things. And so, but you know what? That was random. I shouldn't say that it was random because Mike's been a great supporter in listening to my podcast, to watching these podcasts now. And as a matter of fact, when I had him on a few weeks ago, he never asked. I just said, "Come on and let's talk about Band of Angels," and that's a bit of that organic feel that we're talking about. That it's I don't mean to be cheesy and all of that, but it's sort of that warm feeling of that entrepreneurial community that I know what I'm talking about here. And so to have a piece in that every single day, again, not just with the power of the Kauffman Foundation, but even from what you've done before and other ventures now, has to be. I ask people all the time, Melissa, what's your why? What gets you out of bed? That has to be a pretty strong motivator, I assume.
Yeah, for me, the why is really just, making a community that's more equitable than what we found here when we all started. So this is a time where I think those issues are front and center. But the reality is we've got a long way to go in Kansas City to really make entrepreneurship accessible for everyone who has a great idea. We're not there today. That's just the reality. And so, my why is waking up every day to try and get us, half a step, 2 steps, if I'm lucky, a big jump closer. But, I think this time, as you mentioned, is really something that has shown the deep inequities in our society, especially here in Kansas City. So even recently, we had the federal government release the PPP loans and EIDL loans that were lifelines for a lot of small businesses, or were intended to be. But of the thousands of PPP loans that we made here in Kansas City, I mean, less than 24 were made to Black entrepreneurs. It's unacceptable. That's a level of, when people talk about systemic racism, this is what they're talking about. And we've got to get better. We've got to bridge these divides. And so we can make all the excuses in the world about credit scores, and can make all the excuses in the world about collateral. But the reality is that these are mechanisms and inequities of our own making. Who invented the credit score? Who invented the collateral requirement? Just as easily as these things can be invented, they can be changed. And so we've got to ask for more, and we've got to really push.
We have to ask for more. We have to, if we understand it as you do, and I believe that I do, we have to help educate more. And we have to, getting back to what we talked about before, I might get off on a tangent here, but it's what I do. We have to listen. I've found in the last 5 months that I have learned so much more about the reasoning behind so many of these protests and the racial injustice in this country by listening and just having these conversations. And so I think that we do have a long ways to go. I mean, there are a lot of things that give me hope, but we have a long ways to go. And there's there's so many resources out there too. Right now I'm listening to the 1619 podcast. If anyone
Hmm.
has listened to that, I had started it a while back. I will admit readily right now that I am guilty of starting 25 things and then sometimes not getting through any of them. That's the way I'm wired, I guess. But I just challenged myself the other day after a very heated discussion about race that I want to listen to this on the way in and home from every game as I get through it. And you just start learning more. I'm reading White Fragility right now. You just keep learning more and just try to walk in someone else's shoes, right? And at the minimum, that's going to make you better. My friend Kiana Sinks has helped me learn more. She says those are great folks, Dan Smith. Um, I don't know Naya Richardson.
Yeah, Nia works for the city.
Nia, sorry.
She runs the Casey Biz Care office, and she works with Rick Usher. She's a great entrepreneurial advocate. You used to have her on the show.
Well, let's just make that happen right now. You can do it, or Kiana can do it, and we'll go from there. So, a few final things, Melissa, as we wind it down. We talked a bit about the challenges, you and your team not traveling, still being able to do this and connect. What have you learned over these last 5 months in terms of, building, sustaining, maintaining those relationships and doing it in this way?
Yeah, that's a great question, Joel. I think you really just the lesson that I've learned is you have to show up, you have to listen, and you have to show up more than once. And I think there's a lot of times where people kind of in an institutional role, whether, when they're getting involved in any new community, you kind of show up, you do the big announcement, you look flashy, and then you leave and you never come back. That's not what building a relationship is about. How many friends do you have that, you had one conversation with and then never talked to again? Not very many. So, building relationship is a long-term thing. And I think right now, we're focused on the region and we've got a lot of great allies. We've also got to do a better job of broadening our networks here in Kansas City too. And so, getting to know new folks, getting to know work that's going on, has been going on, just listening to entrepreneurs about their experiences in this time. There was a conversation I had the other day. I have to do a plug or the Kauffman public affairs folks will absolutely murder me. But we did a little blog conversation with Chris Evans, who runs T-Shirt King here in Kansas City. It's a family-owned business. You can check it out on the website. But hearing about Chris's experience in this time is just really eye-opening. I mean, the number of banks that people have to go to before they can get an answer, much less a loan, is really just mind-boggling. And the hoops that entrepreneurs are being forced to jump through, especially entrepreneurs who are Black, is just absolutely crazy to me. I mean, if you thought the MPhil fly roll was confusing, you should check out trying to get a loan as an entrepreneur in Kansas City.
Mm. Well, and we continue to hear these stories. The only way, by the way, to learn about them is to share them, right? And to be able to pass those on. What do things look like going forward? I'm not asking you to predict when the virus is going to end. Newsflash, it's not ending tomorrow, next week, or next month. So we have to. We're not going to get people to stop making this political, unfortunately, but we do have to figure out ways to push forward. And excuse me, I also know you guys have that interesting cycle, pandemic or not, where you start getting into that research mode. And I think you're getting close to that right now. So give me a feel for what the next 6 months and a year look like.
Yeah, I think, right now we're nearing the end of our grant making season. So this is really the fun time of the year for me where I get to make a lot of those nice phone calls. But when we finish up here, we'll really start doing the research to scope out what we want to do in 2021. And, right now you can probably make a pretty good guess as to what's front of mind for me. I want to learn a lot more about the entrepreneurial experience in the heartland and, in the age of COVID, especially as it pertains to how people are getting access to financial resources. And, I have a lot of questions, very detailed questions about exactly where everybody sits on that list. So it's, I'm doing a lot of research. I'm doing a lot of planning for the next 3 months, and then the process starts over again. And the great thing about this work in philanthropy is not that you ever solve a problem. You know, if we're doing our job well, we tackle problems that are bigger than you can ever solve in a lifetime. But every year you get another try. Every cycle you get another try, and you can learn a little bit, which is so important, and you can adjust. But we'll be learning from all the grants that we made this year and trying to get a little bit better next year.
And you guys will, I know that. So a couple things real quick. Hey, there's our buddy Dan Smith chiming in. So always good to hear from Dan. And then I don't know if you know Jennifer Dehan or not, but she's amazing. And she says, as a community, we need to foster, drive creativity and opportunity for all. There are so many great ideas sitting idle because too many are left out of the chance to get started. Don't know that we could say it any better than that. I think that certainly you and I both agree with Jennifer's sentiments there, and that's good to read. That's good to see for sure. On a personal level, I had to ask you, because I don't know, I as a guy that struggles with time management, and I'm trying, I really am, like, we got baseball, we got podcasts, we got speaking, we got the business, we got family, all that stuff. Are you really going for your MBA right now through MIT?
This fall, I'm getting started. Man, Joel, I don't know if you've got any tips. I'm gonna have to pick them up. I don't know
Not
how
for
I'm
that,
gonna
I
get this
don't.
done. But I've been working all summer just in my free time on finishing up a stats class, and I finished it up about a month ago. I hadn't done math in maybe 15 years, so that was quite the undertaking. But I hear they do math and science at MIT, so I probably got to brush up on that stuff.
It might be somewhere in the well, we know what the yes. I hear MIT, and that scares me to begin with. So, but I think you have some strong allegiances to that neck of the woods, right, and to New England, based on your history at was Boston College, right?
Yeah. Boston's a second home to me. So I was there
Yeah.
for almost 10 years. I loved every minute of it. There were times I thought I would never leave, but the pull of Kansas City is just too strong. So I love being home. This is my home. It always will be. But Boston's like a second home to me, and so I'll get to see some old friends, see some old stomping grounds. I'm really excited.
I love that place. I wrestle sometimes because people always want to know favorite stadium, favorite road city. Favorite stadium is Fenway Park, easily. I mean, it's not even really a fair question, because I feel like Fenway and Wrigley, here I go on a tangent again. Fenway and Wrigley shouldn't really even be compared to anything else, because they're from a different generation. But there's something about walking into Fenway. Having grown up in Chicago, maybe Wrigley to me is just too normal. But and we also don't get there very much in the American League. But there's a feeling. It's almost like, how you have that feeling when you give out that grant check. It's not the same feeling, but it's just one that's somewhat indescribable. But when I walk into Fenway Park, it's like I'm being transported back to a different time, and there's just a feel. So I miss getting the chance to go to Boston this year, and can't wait to get back next year. But that does lead me to my last question here. What is it about this city and this region that is so unique and so special?
I mean, the speed on the bases. I think no. Honestly, for me, this is home, and it always will be. My family's been here for a couple of generations, and there's a friendliness here that is genuine, that I think is really special. We've got all of the tools, as one might say, for really competing on a national level, and there's so much opportunity to improve here. And so that's the thing that really gets me excited about Kansas City. Is it's not just that it's a great city, although it is. It's not just that it's a welcoming culture, a philanthropic culture, a barbecue based culture, although it is, but it's also It's a place where it seems to be on the tipping point. And so this is, there's a challenge in front of us in a very big way. But if we can rise to that challenge, this is going to become one of the great American cities. I honestly believe that. And so, it's a fun time to get to be here and to play in that world. And how often do you have a chance to kind of influence the path of one of the great American cities? Not that often. So for me, it's a really rewarding thing to do, to know that I'm kind of helping my hometown excel for years to come.
Yeah, and attaching your name to the great Kauffman name, as we talked about, Mr. K, Mrs. K, the legacy that they have left, and the fact that you get to be involved in that and help change lives. And I keep saying that, changing lives, because you hand out, that grant check to whoever that nonprofit, whoever that organization is. It does have that major effect throughout this region. And so I love the passion in what you're doing. I can hear it. I could see it in what you write and what you do. I have major respect for you going into this MIT endeavor, and I can't wait to hear about how it goes too. I couldn't do it. I could not pull, but I just used the baseball excuse. I got 6 months. I can't commit to anything, so I'm off the hook.
Well, you can always apply next year, Joel. Maybe we'll be classmates.
We could be. I don't think I've taken a math class in like 25 years, so there's that part of it too.
It can be done. Just look at me.
All right, stop. Melissa, this was great. Awesome way to start off the week. Certainly, I'll encourage everyone again, if you want to find out more information about the Kauffman Foundation and so many of these stories, and just the importance of diversity and inclusion, and really making this community a better place. Check them out at Kauffman.org. And Melissa's the Senior Program Officer, Entrepreneurship for the Kauffman Foundation. So Melissa, really enjoyed getting the opportunity to do this. Thanks for all that you're doing, the Kauffman Foundation is doing, and continued success, certainly with MIT, of course, too, but with everything that you're doing for entrepreneurs in this community. I really appreciate it.
Well, thanks for having me, Joel. It's been a pleasure.
All right, Melissa Roberts Chapman has been my guest, and an awesome one. What a fantastic way to start out the week. So that's going to do it for this episode of Rounding the Bases Live, presented by Enterprise Bank and Trust, coming to you from the KCAV studios, Kansas City Audio Visual. Check them out, give them a call, tell them, let me know, and I'll help connect you if I need to be able to do that. And again, thanks to Enterprise Bank and Trust for their support. Another great episode tomorrow is the Chancellor at Metropolitan Community College, Dr. Kimberly Beatty. There's another powerful woman here in this community, and I'm really interested in how they're handling this fall. There's a lot on the line in terms of education and a lot of navigating going on to try to make this process safe and better. So excited for that. Have a great Monday, everyone, and hope to see you back here tomorrow on Rounding the Bases Live, presented by Enterprise Bank and Trust.